I was standing in line at the pharmacy when the message came through. No context, no follow-up, just, "Mom thinks it's better if you don't come. Sophie feels uncomfortable when you're around." I read it twice. The first time I thought maybe it was meant for someone else. The second time I knew better. It was Ethan, my younger brother. Well, younger by 3 years and about 15 years of maturity. I stared at the screen briefly like the words might explain themselves. They didn't. There wasn't even a sorry at the end. "No, we'll make it up to you." Not even a half-assed, "maybe next time." Just a quiet dismissal from my own father's birthday dinner. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, "Okay, that's cold," you're right. But it wasn't surprising. Not anymore. This kind of thing doesn't happen all at once. It builds quietly, like mold. See, I'm Emma Carter, M36 former Army medic currently living in Denver working in logistics. I don't own a dog or a houseplant. I sleep through most holidays and I've never cried during a rom-com. I've also spent the last 15 years being the financial spine of a family that treated me like the afterthought of an inside joke. You know the type. The responsible one, the person who gets the group text about someone's car breaking down at midnight, but never gets the text when a cousin graduates or gets engaged. The one who sends birthday money on time but gets "maybe next year" when you ask for a visit. That's been me since 19, back when I was still in uniform, stationed in places where the biggest luxury was dry socks. I was wiring money home to cover missed mortgage payments, medical bills, and once, I kid you not, a weekend spa retreat. My mom accidentally booked it with her debit card linked to my joint account. When I asked about it, she said, "Oh, honey, you wouldn't want me to cancel last minute. That's just bad etiquette." Ethan, meanwhile, has never worked more than 9 months straight in his life. His resume reads like a list of unfinished hobbies: 1 semester of real estate school, 2 weeks trying to flip NFTs, a failed attempt at importing candles from Canada. I'm not even making that up. But he's charming, and he's good at looking stressed in front of mom, which is all it takes to be called resilient. Meanwhile, I'm just intense. That text from Ethan, it wasn't about Sophie. She's been around, 6 months, maybe less. No, that was just the excuse of the week. The real message was, "We've decided you don't belong, and we don't think we owe you a seat anymore." And fine, let's say I believed it was about Sophie, that she did feel uncomfortable. Then riddle me this. Why did I help cover her dental surgery last spring when her insurance didn't approve the claim? Why did I co-sign the lease on Ethan's apartment, the one she's living in now? If I'm so hard to be around, why is my name on every bill in that house but hers? So no, I didn't respond. Not to him. I just closed the message, opened my notes app and scrolled to a file called Running Totals. It's not fancy, just numbers and dates, payments, transfers, medical expenses, bailouts, rent. Every time they asked, every time I said yes, every time they forgot to say thank you. At the top of that list is $47, $285, not including gifts. This does not include the house down payment I helped with back in 2018, which, surprise, only has Ethan's name on the deed. And now I was too uncomfortable to sit at the dinner table. I could have lost it, could have gone full meltdown mode. But I didn't, because deep down I already knew this was coming. It wasn't the words that hurt. It was the fact that no one in that house even thought they needed to explain them. And if that's not a clue you've outstayed your role in the family script, I don't know what is. Comment if you've ever been the responsible one no one checks on. And yeah, hit that subscribe button if nothing else, so YouTube reminds you, you matter. The thing about being excluded is that you eventually stop asking to be included. And once you stop asking, the silence isn't scary anymore. It's power. Not loud, not angry, just clear. So I got home that night and didn't wait for anyone to reach out. I didn't text Ethan. I didn't call mom. I didn't send my usual follow-up birthday gift. I didn't even check their social media for photos of the dinner table I wasn't invited to. Instead, I opened my bank app and changed the recurring transfers. Then I logged into our old shared utility account and removed my name. Then I poured a glass of wine and sat in my apartment quietly, aware of how still everything had become. And you know what? It didn't feel lonely. It felt overdue. I opened the spreadsheet. Not the one for work, the other one. The one I'd started in a military barracks in 2012, half asleep between shifts with a headlamp and a basic calculator app. Back then, it was just a place to track what I was sending home: car repairs for Dad, co-pays for Mom's blood pressure meds, rent help for Ethan after he lost a client again. Over time, that file turned into something else. There were no colors, no formulas, just rows, amounts, dates, tiny explanations like dental, Ethan, overdraft, family furnace repair, Ethan's second attempt at t-shirt company. That last one still made me blink. He had printed 500 shirts with a wolf in sunglasses, Alpha State of Mind in neon green. Sold 12. The spreadsheet wasn't a vendetta. I didn't create it to hold it over anyone's head. I kept it the way people keep journals, quietly. It helped me feel like I wasn't crazy. I scrolled through the years, watching myself disappear in the margins. 2015, 2 months of Ethan's rent while I was in Kuwait, living in a tent and showering every third day. $2, $800 for Mom's bridge paid directly to the clinic because she didn't want Dad to know. $9,000 for a down payment on a starter condo for Ethan, his name only. They said it was cleaner that way. $200 to cover a bounced check tied to Ethan's failed e-commerce launch. $2.217 monthly to keep Mom's utilities from going into collection. No one ever asked how I was doing. Not once did anyone say, "Do you need anything?" I mean, I was fine. I had income. I wasn't underwater. But still, you'd think after year 4 or 5 of quietly bankrolling the family, someone might pause and ask, "Is this sustainable?" They didn't. Instead, the words started to shift. At first, I was so generous. Then I was so lucky to have a stable job. Then I was emotionally distant and eventually difficult, right? Difficult because I didn't fly back for Ethan's birthday when I had a 14-hour shift on base and no leave time. Because I didn't want to co-sign another business idea that involved pop-up smoothie bikes. Because I didn't laugh when Sophie said, "I just wish Em could relax more." It's like she thinks feelings are a liability. Sophie, the same person who now felt uncomfortable around me. I stared at the screen, the numbers blurring. This wasn't just a file. This was a damn crime scene. Line by line, I could see it, the slow erosion of personhood. I'd been rebranded from daughter to provider without anyone signing a memo. I remember the last time someone hugged me in that house without thanking me right after. I couldn't. Even the holidays, I'd fly in for gifts in hand, and within an hour someone would say, "Can you take a look at this form? I don't get what the insurance is saying." Or, "I meant to ask you, do you know if that tax credit still applies to us?" Us. That little word, so convenient when there's money on the line, so invisible when there's kindness. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. It was funny. They all thought of me as the strong one, the unshakable. But the truth, I wasn't strong. I was just trained. In triage, you learn to work fast with limited supplies and zero time to explain. You learn to keep your tone calm while someone bleeds out. You learn that no one cares how tired you are, only that you still show up. And in my family, that's all I ever did: show up quietly, dependably, invisibly. They didn't need me to feel. They needed me to function. And I did for over a decade until that message. "You make her uncomfortable." It wasn't even the cruelty that got me. It was the effortlessness, the way it was sent like a calendar update. There was no fight, no confrontation, no chance for me to say, "What the hell did I do?" Just, "Stay away." So fine I would. Not just from the table, from the whole damn blueprint I'd been carrying for them. Not just from the roles I was handed, from the debt I never agreed to owe. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, not to cook, just to move. Because here's what no one tells you about being the dependable one: the second you stop playing that part, the whole cast panics. And for the first time, I wondered what it might look like to drop the script entirely. I didn't pack much that time. Just a weekend bag and a bottle of bourbon I knew my dad liked, even though he always said he'd cut back after Thanksgiving. It was supposed to be a quick visit, 2 nights, maybe 3. I'd taken the Friday off, flown in from Denver, and rented a car because Ethan's was in the shop again. I'd learned not to rely on airport pickups that turned into last-minute excuses. Mom met me at the front porch with that same over-enthusiastic smile she used every time she wasn't happy to see me, but didn't want to look like it. She opened the screen door and said, "You look tired. Are you eating enough?" Translation: "You're thinner than your brother's girlfriend, and we don't like that." Inside, nothing had changed. The same old couch with the same brown throw that smelled faintly of vanilla and stress. The exact framed quote in the kitchen: "Family is everything," which hit a little different now. Ethan walked in half an hour later wearing joggers and a $90 hoodie I hadn't seen before. He fist bumped me like I was a guy he hadn't seen since boot camp. "What's up, soldier?" He grinned. I'm not even offended by that anymore. That kind of crap just rolls off now. Sophie came in right behind him, too much perfume, not enough boundaries. She gave me the kind of hug where her arms didn't touch my sides and said, "I told Ethan you'd be early. You're always so efficient." Efficient, like I'm a spreadsheet. Dinner that night was quiet. Ethan did most of the talking about crypto, about how traditional work is kind of a scam, and how he was in talks with a guy from Austin who really gets the vision. Mom nodded like she understood any of that. Dad just kept chewing. I sat there wondering how many meals I'd funded in this kitchen over the years. How many grocery bills? How many sudden expenses? And still I was the one people tiptoed around like I might ruin the mood by breathing too hard. It wasn't even tension. It was detachment, like I'd been moved to the guest list at my own table. Later that night, I helped Mom in the kitchen to avoid the Ethan-Sophie show happening in the living room. She handed me a dish towel and said, "You know, I think Ethan is finally turning a corner. He's calmer now, more balanced." "Must be nice," I said, drying a plate. She paused. "He said you seemed a little rigid." I told him, "It's just how you are. You've always been so self-sufficient." There it was, the compliment that isn't a compliment. I nodded. Then she added, "I mean, it's not a bad thing, but not everyone's wired like you. Some people just need more room." I could have asked, "More room for what? Bad decisions, repeated bailouts?" My bank account. But I didn't, because I knew the answer. Mom wasn't trying to be cruel. She was just doing what she always did, defending the fragile at the expense of the stable. Because in our house, whoever broke first got the attention, and I'd never broken, not out loud. That night, I slept on the old twin bed in my childhood room, staring at the ceiling fan, while Ethan's voice carried from the living room something about seed money and freedom from corporate slavery. The next morning, I left early. No breakfast, no goodbye hug. A note on the fridge said, "Thanks for the hospitality." I didn't owe them a meltdown. I didn't need to slam doors or shout truths across a dining table. I just needed to make one clear decision: I was done helping people who pretended I didn't help at all. Back in Denver, I canceled the next auto transfer for the family phone plan, then the one for the utility buffer. Then I called the pharmacy and switched Mom's prescription card to her name. Everything still worked. They just had to manage it now. Funny thing, no one noticed. Not at first. No calls, no angry texts, not even a passive-aggressive hope. "You're okay." Just silence. Which was fine. I needed the quiet to think, and the more I sat with it, the clearer it became. I wasn't mad that they leaned on me. I was mad they made it look like I never held anything up. I was microwaving leftovers when the first alert came through. It wasn't dramatic, just a bland push notification from my credit monitoring service, new account activity detected. At first, I figured it was nothing, probably an algorithm burp or a delayed update from a card I barely used. But I tapped in anyway, more out of habit than concern. Then I saw it. A new line of credit opened 3 weeks prior under my name at a bank I'd never touched. $7,500 limit already maxed out. Recent purchases, high-end boutique spa retreat electronics retailer. The billing address back home. My first thought wasn't even panic. It was this eerie, quiet disbelief, like when you walk into your house and realize something's just wrong. I pulled up my credit report. There it was. Not one, but 2 accounts opened in the past 6 months. 1 personal loan, 1 credit card. Both using my social security number, 1 already past due. I sat down, the phone still in my hand, my heart flat, and the only name that made sense was Ethan. Because it wasn't just the address, it was the pattern, the timing. I'd noticed Mom's pharmacy statement had gone to a P.O. box recently and assumed it was some privacy thing. It wasn't. It was rerouted. I called the bank. The woman on the line was polite, professional. Asked me a series of questions I'd answered 1,000 times in military paperwork: full name, date of birth, last 4 of Social Security. Then she asked, "Did you authorize this account on the 12th of April?" "No," I said flatly. There was a pause. "Do you recognize the email used to open the application?" She read it out loud. It was a variation of my name, but with a single letter flipped. And the phone number. Not mine. Not even close. The rep continued. The documents provided were flagged for review but cleared after manual verification. Whose signature was on the loan agreement, I asked. She hesitated. Legally, I can't say, but I can tell you we'll escalate this to our fraud division and you'll receive a follow-up within 3 to 5 business days. I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there. My mouth was dry, my ears were ringing. It wasn't just identity theft, it was identity exploitation. Someone didn't steal my credit, they used my reliability. My name was clean, my military record flawless, my income stable, my trustworthiness weaponized. And whoever did it, they knew exactly what they were doing. It had to be someone who had access. Someone who didn't think I'd look too closely. Someone who assumed I'd clean up after them like always. I didn't call Ethan. I didn't call Mom. I called a lawyer. I didn't even have a name yet. I typed "financial fraud veteran legal help" into Google and picked the first listing that didn't look shady. The receptionist answered like I'd caught her mid-sip of something hot. "Office of Laura Bennett." "I need help," I said. "Someone's been opening credit under my name. I didn't approve any of it." A pause. "Do you suspect family?" I didn't even blink. "Yes." She exhaled slowly. "We can get you in Thursday at 10:00. I said yes. I didn't care if I had meetings or training. I'd reschedule anything. Then I hung up and opened the spreadsheet again, the one I swore I was done with. I added a new tab. Unauthorized accounts. And for the first time, I labeled a section fraud. It felt unreal. I mean, I'd built entire trauma kits under pressure. I'd treated injuries worse than anything the average civilian could stomach. I'd handled 19-hour shifts and cried exactly 0 times in front of patients. But this felt like betrayal with a paper trail. Because it wasn't just the money, it was the audacity. To assume I wouldn't find out. To assume I'd just roll it into the silent tally of sacrifices. To treat my name like a prepaid debit card. I closed the file, grabbed my coat, and walked. It was cold outside. Denver cold, the kind that smacks you straight in the face and clears every warm thought you had. And I welcomed it because finally my brain had stopped spinning. And in that quiet, something locked into place. They didn't just cross a line. They rewrote the contract without telling me. So now I was rewriting it. I didn't expect anything in the mail. Most of what I got these days was digital bills, appointment reminders, random coupons, but a cream-colored envelope was wedged between a hardware store flyer and an Amazon return on Thursday morning. No return address, just my name in shaky, familiar handwriting. I knew it before I even opened it. Tom. Inside was a short note, one paragraph clipped to a stack of printed documents, the kind of quiet confession that didn't need a greeting. Emma, we've made mistakes. I've made mistakes. But you need to know what's going on. I didn't know where else to turn. Tom. That line, I didn't know where else to turn, landed harder than any of the fraud alerts. I laid the pages out across my kitchen table. No music, no coffee, just silence and a spreading weight I hadn't been prepared for. The first document was a bank statement, a joint account in my parents' names, slowly bled dry over 2 years. Withdrawals labeled with K, Carter, or Holstead All. Grocery stores, Venmo transfers, spa days. The trail wasn't subtle. Some notes had comments in the margins, Tom trying to understand where the money had gone. Emergency, next to a $600 charge. Ask Karen, scribbled under a $900 withdrawal. The next page was worse. An email between Tom and their financial advisor. The house wasn't paid off as they'd proudly told everyone. It had been refinanced twice, quietly. Now it was months behind. Tom's email read, I didn't realize how far behind we were. I've tried talking to Karen. She says she's handling it, but Emma can't know. She's done enough already. That sentence? She's done enough already. He'd never said it to me. Not once. But there it was, tucked into an email like a final whisper of recognition. My parents weren't asking for more help this time. That should have felt like a relief. But it didn't, because what I saw wasn't just debt. It was evidence of deliberate silence. They'd let it happen. They'd let my mother Karen keep draining them, hoping I'd never notice, hoping that if they didn't say anything out loud, I'd keep being the fallback plan. I stared at the numbers. The overdraft notices, the polite warnings from banks. They'd ignored the fake calm they tried to maintain every time I visited. It was like watching someone rearrange furniture while the house was on fire. I wasn't angry at Tom. Not in that moment. What I felt was something colder, realizing the floorboards you trusted were already rotting, yet people smiled and invited you inside anyway. There were no tears. I'd cried enough over these people. I just kept flipping pages. One of the last documents was a line of credit application. Not mine this time. His. Signed, submitted, and then denied. Too much risk. The house on Westbury Lane, the one with the maple tree I fell out of when I was 7, was officially in pre-foreclosure review. They were weeks away from losing it. And they'd told no one, not even each other, because my mom Karen was still shopping like nothing had changed. Last I checked, she posted a photo of a new mixer she'd waited years to afford. I closed the folder and sat back in my chair. My tea had gone cold. I hadn't touched it. I didn't call anyone. Didn't scream or throw things. I just sat there. Because this wasn't about a bad financial decision. This was about being willfully used, about being the stable one for so long people assumed I wouldn't flinch, even while they sank under the weight of their chaos. The worst part, I'd have helped if they'd just asked, if they'd been honest. But instead, they let my name get used. Let my trust get sold off piece by piece. And now they were quietly drowning in the wreckage of a life they pretended was still intact. I went to bed early that night. No phone, no television, no scrolling. And in the dark, I made a decision. Not out of rage, not even revenge. Just clarity. If they couldn't protect what they had, I would. But I'd do it on my terms. I called Laura the next morning and told her everything. She didn't flinch. Didn't make small talk or give me that concerned pause most people offer when they act like they care without getting involved. She just said, bring everything. So I did printouts, emails, screenshots, and the manila envelope Tom had sent. Even the spreadsheet I thought I'd never open again. Her office was in a modest brick building outside Inglewood next to a dentist and a dry cleaner. No glass towers or receptionist with a headset, just a receptionist named Tina, who handed me tea and didn't ask questions. Laura Bennett was in her early 50s with a silver streak in her ponytail, a blunt-cut blazer, and the kind of gaze that let silence do the work. She didn't comment when I laid the pile on her desk. She just started reading. I watched her eyes move from page to page, her pen tapping once for each document that confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. When she finished the last page, she leaned back, crossed her arms, and said, "What you're describing isn't just financial abuse. It's structural dependency." She said it like it was a diagnosis, like she'd seen it before. They've built a system where you're the safety net for every failure. Quietly, repeatedly, and now it's unraveling because you stopped pretending. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. She slid a legal pad across the desk. On it, she'd written 3 words: control, structure, boundaries. "We can't fix their behavior," she said, "but we can take you out of the crossfire legally and permanently." That's when I exhaled for real. Because I hadn't come here to fix my family. I'd come here to stop funding it. We talked for an hour, maybe more. She explained what a private trust could do, how we could buy the house under it and lock it down. My parents could stay for life if needed, but they wouldn't be able to refinance, sell, or leverage it again. It would remove the house from the firing line. We'd put the debt on the table too, consolidate it, pay it off, but with paperwork, signatures, and conditions. No more whispered calls, no more emergency texts that felt like landmines, and most importantly, my mother wouldn't have direct financial access. Non-negotiable, I said. Laura nodded. Smart. I didn't feel smart. I felt like someone who'd waited too long to stop bleeding and now needed stitches. That night, I went home and opened every old bank account email I still had. There were dozens, some I hadn't looked at in years: auto pays for utilities, one-time money, transfers, weird Zelle requests I'd approved without question. I started cross-checking names, amounts, and timestamps. There were overlaps, times when Ethan and Mom had both pulled money on the same day using different reasons. Times when I was told it was just for this month, but the same bill got paid 3 times. It wasn't just forgetfulness. It was learned behavior. They knew I wouldn't say no. They knew I wouldn't check. I stayed up until 2:30 a.m., categorizing every transaction. I created a new spreadsheet labeled Pattern Recognition. And as I typed, a strange calm settled in, because when something has a pattern, it can be interrupted. Laura called the next day. "We can start drafting the trust this week," she said. "And I'll begin the debt analysis too. You'll need to decide how visible you want to be in this. Meaning, we can do this quietly through a third-party trustee, or you can sign directly, depends on how much noise you're willing to tolerate." I paused. I didn't want noise. I didn't want scenes. I just wanted out. "Third party," I said. "No direct control, just protection." She paused momentarily, then said, "It's rare that someone with your background comes in this prepared." "It's not preparation," I replied. "It's survival." We finalized the plan over the next few days. The house would be purchased through a blind trust under my name. My parents would have lifetime occupancy, but no financial authority. Every loan and credit card tied to their names would be paid off once legally, publicly documented down to the last cent. And my mother, her access would be legally restricted. We'd mail the documents with a calm, factual, firm cover letter. No emotion, no invitation, just structure. Because for the first time in years, this wasn't about making peace. It was about drawing a map out of the wreckage. And I was ready to follow it. I didn't sleep the night we signed the drafts. Not because I was anxious, but because something in me had shifted. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, thinking about how long I'd been the solution, the fixer, the fallback, and how that role had never really been given to me. I just picked it up like a duty no one asked for, but everyone expected. There was no revenge in what I was doing. No need to punish. I just didn't want to be consumed anymore. That morning, I made coffee in silence. I didn't check my phone, didn't scroll through messages. I sat at the kitchen table, hands around the mug, and let the quiet settle. There was a difference between leaving and letting go. One was escape, the other was clarity. And I was finally clear. The paperwork was nearly finished. Laura emailed over the final revisions and suggested we send everything out within the next 48 hours. I reread every line, not for mistakes, just for weight. Lifetime occupancy rights, third-party trustee stipend limitations, credit restrictions, legal boundaries. None of it was vindictive, it was protective. It said, "You're not being cast out, but you no longer get to burn the furniture and ask for more firewood." That same afternoon, I got a voicemail from Mom. Her voice was unusually light. "Just wanted to say hi. We're thinking of doing a little barbecue this weekend. Sophie said she might drop by. Would love for you to come, Em." She sounded normal, like nothing was unraveling. I deleted the message without responding. There was no need to explain myself anymore. I wasn't trying to get anyone to understand. Understanding requires listening. They'd spent years hearing me, without ever listening. I printed the final documents neatly, one copy for the legal handoff, one for the certified mail envelope. I chose thick stock paper not to be dramatic, but because I wanted the message to feel permanent in their hands. No excuses, no edits. Once signed, it would be done. Laura suggested we send a note with the packet, something factual and emotionless. I drafted it myself. Per enclosed documents, the property located at 491 Westbury Lane has been secured under a private trust to ensure stability. All existing debts have been addressed. Lifetime residence is protected under specific conditions outlined in Section 4.3. Future financial access has been legally limited. This is not a punishment. This is a boundary. Emi Horsa. We sent it out by overnight delivery. Tracking confirmed it arrived the next morning at 10:17 a.m. No one called. No one emailed. But that night, Ethan sent me a message. Just one line. "You've lost your mind." I didn't reply because I hadn't lost anything. I'd finally regained something. That weekend, I deleted the shared drive we'd used for years: vacation planning, birthday reminders, financial files, emergency contacts. It had always been my idea. I'd set it up. I maintained it. And I was done. There was no anger in the deletion, just space. Then came the silence. Not the kind filled with tension, the clean kind. Nobody asked where I was. Nobody called to ask for a quick favor. The absence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. And for once, I wasn't trying to fill it. I cooked for myself, slept in, walked to the park without my phone. I didn't owe anyone anything, and I didn't need anyone to say thank you. I had created a line that couldn't be crossed, not because I hated them, but because I finally loved myself more than I feared their disapproval. The plan wasn't revenge. It was a rescue from a role I never asked for, but one I'd carried until it nearly erased me. Now I could finally step out of the frame. I signed the wire transfer while my lunch sat cold on the counter. No music, no ceremonial sip of coffee, no deep breath, just a click. Years of family weight shifted from debt to paid in full. The trust now held the house on Westbury Lane. It looked like a standard asset transfer. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been buried under obligation and guilt since I was 21. Laura handled the handoff with her usual sharp precision: title, updated county records, cleared notices, filed, everything notarized. Once done, we scheduled delivery of the notification packets. One set for my parents, one for Ethan. I added something extra to Ethan's, not dramatic, just clear. A one-page letter that read, "You are no longer a legal beneficiary of any family-owned assets. Your name has been removed from the household trust structure effective immediately. This is not personal. This is structural." We sent it certified. He signed for it himself. Mom didn't call, but 2 days later I got a text from her. We got the documents. Just a little surprised. Please call. I didn't. There was nothing left to explain. They hadn't asked when they pulled money from my accounts. They hadn't called before they refinanced the house again behind my back. They taught me how to be silent. I was just finally fluent. The trust included a monthly stipend for Mom and Tom to cover basic living expenses, food, utilities, meds, but nothing more. No emergency extras, no vacations disguised as recovery time, no bailouts masked as, "It's just a loan." Everything was managed through a third-party fiduciary. I wouldn't be the gatekeeper. That wasn't the point. I just didn't want to be the ATM anymore. 3 days later, I drove by the house. Didn't stop. Just coasted down the opposite side of the street. The porch light was on, even though it was 200 p.m. The yard looked overwatered. A bag of mulch still sat unopened on the driveway. It looked exactly like I remembered and nothing like home. We mailed a separate letter with the trust summary at Laura's suggestion. Just 5 lines. You will not be displaced. You will not be asked to leave, but you can no longer borrow against this home or list it as collateral. You may live here as long as you like, provided you adhere to the terms outlined in Section 3.6. This is not a punishment. This is a legal boundary. The silence that followed was louder than any fight. No voicemail from Tom. No sarcastic jabs from Ethan. Not even a passive-aggressive thumbs up on my next Instagram photo. It was like I'd flipped a switch. The family group thread died quietly. Messages slowed. Birthdays came and went. Nobody mentioned dinner. Nobody forwarded memes. Then came the envelope. Cream-colored hand address, no return name. I knew Mom's handwriting like muscle memory. Inside a single card, blank except for one sentence in black ink. We didn't expect this, but maybe we should have. No signature, just that. I placed it between an unread copy of Atomic Habits and a candle I'd never lit on the bookshelf. I didn't need it to mean anything. That was the freedom. I no longer needed their reaction to validate my decision. I'd been buying peace for years through rent checks, utility payments, medical bills, gifts that came with silence. Now I'd finally purchased something else, distance. Not out of cruelty, out of necessity. The trust was airtight, no access, no appeal. Ethan wasn't just locked out, he was written out. Not because I hated him, but because he never once asked what it cost me to keep everyone else standing. For once, I'd chosen myself, and no one saw it coming because they never thought I'd stop. But I had. And the house they'd risked so much to keep was still theirs to live in. Only now it had my name buried deep in the foundation, not for credit, but for protection. I left my phone in the car on purpose, not because I was worried someone might call, but because I knew I'd be tempted to check. I walked into Laura's office wearing the same boots I'd deployed in, scuffed at the toe, stubborn at the heel. Something about them felt right for the occasion. Unforgiving, practical. Mom and Tom were already seated when I arrived. Early, of course. They'd always been good at showing up when a clock told them to, not so much when I needed them. Laura gave them polite nods, no small talk, just the paperwork laid out in 3 neat stacks across the table. I sat across from them. No handshake, no hello, just the sound of the leather chair creaking under me and the rustle of contracts. The air felt thinner than it should have. Laura went over the terms slowly, carefully, as if it were the first time. I appreciated that. My parents didn't ask many questions, just nodded, scanned pages, and let silence do the heavy lifting. Tom wore a navy windbreaker I hadn't seen since high school. He kept folding and unfolding the pen like he wanted to be somewhere else. Mom's hair was pinned up like she'd stepped out of Sunday service. Her eyes stayed fixed on the documents, but I could see the flicker in her fingers every time she reached for a new page. Then it came time to sign. The room didn't shift. No dramatic thunderclap, No emotional collapse, just 4 pens, 3 signatures, and a quiet exhale. When it was done, Laura gathered the pages with the efficiency of a woman who'd seen too many broken partnerships dressed up as family. Mom glanced at me. Her voice dropped just above a whisper. "Thank you." I didn't nod, didn't smile, just sat still, fingers folded. There was no apology in her tone, just the kind of gratitude people offer when they realize you've done something they never expected. Not out of generosity, but out of finality. No one asked for a hug. No one reached across the table. We all just stood. Tom adjusted his jacket like it mattered. Mom slipped the folder into her purse without even looking at the cover. They left first. Their footsteps down the hall sounded tired, not the heavy stomp of defiance, more like the slow tread of people who'd finally read the fine print on their safety net. I stayed back to scan the final packet. Laura didn't say much. She just handed me a copy and locked the rest in her cabinet. "Done," she said, crisp as always. And it was. Back in my car, I sat with the folder on my lap. The heat from the dashboard warmed it like it mattered. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like gravity had shifted, not lighter, just differently distributed. I drove home without music. Let the silence follow me like a shadow that no longer needed introduction. Once inside, I poured a glass of wine and placed the signed deed on the coffee table. No frame, no fanfare, just ink on paper, proving that I'd finally learned how to stop bleeding out quietly. The apartment was still. I didn't turn on the television or answer the texts from coworkers wondering if I'd join the next training cycle. I wasn't avoiding life. I was finally choosing which parts of it I let through the door. For dinner, I roasted vegetables and made rice. Ate on the couch with one leg tucked under me like I always used to before everything became a group decision. No one asked what I was doing. No one demanded to be looped in. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the next emergency to interrupt. The folder stayed where it was, unopened, untouched. I didn't need to reread anything. What mattered had already happened, and it wasn't a single signature. It was the silence that followed it. A silence I had earned not through sacrifice, not through suffering, through structure, and finally through choice. 3 days later, I opened my front door, and there he was, Ethan in a rumpled hoodie, and that entitled posture he wore like armor. No text ahead, no warning, just him standing on my porch like I owed him an audience. "I figured you wouldn't answer if I called," he said, stepping inside before I said he could. Same habit, same arrogance, same assumption that my space was his when it suited him. I didn't offer coffee, didn't ask him to sit. I let the silence stretch while he paced like a teenager trying to summon righteous anger. "You really bought the house?" he asked, like the papers hadn't been mailed. Like this was still a debate. "Yes," I said. "You locked me out of our parents' finances. You know how that looks, right?" "I know exactly how it looks." He scoffed. "It looks like you're trying to play savior while cutting your family off." "No," I said. "It looks like I finally stopped pretending you weren't draining them dry." His mouth tightened. "That told me enough." "I was helping," he muttered. "Were you?" "Because those helpful withdrawals from their joint account matched up pretty neatly with your Spotify subscriptions bar tabs and a monthly rental on a truck you never used." He looked away. "That told me enough." "I didn't touch the house," he said. "No," I said. "You just stood by while they refinanced it twice and let Sophie decorate the guest room like she owned it. You don't understand how hard things have been for us." "You mean for you." I folded my arms. Because last I checked, Tom still climbs ladders with a bad knee and Mom's working part-time to cover their insurance gap. But you're over here playing entrepreneur with their equity." He shook his head, tried again. "You blindsided them, Em. All this legal stuff, it's not how family works." "That's the thing," I said. "It is now." He dropped onto my couch like it owed him something. Ran a hand through his hair. "You think this makes you better than us? I think it makes me free from the circus you kept feeding off." His voice rose. I was trying to build something. I had ideas. I had plans. I didn't flinch. And I had cash, which you spent. There was a flicker in his face when the words hit too close. He'd been counting on my guilt on the quiet M who never said no. He wasn't here to reconcile. He was here to reclaim access. You cut me out, he said, voice low. No, I corrected. You disqualified yourself. He stood again, agitated now. So what? You're just going to sit back and watch us struggle. You're a grown man. If you want to struggle, build one of your own. I'm done financing your safety net. He stared at me like I'd betrayed some unspoken pact, but the only pact I'd ever made was with my peace. This isn't what Tom would have wanted, he said. I stepped to my bookshelf and pulled out a copy of the envelope Tom had sent me the original documents. His shaky handwriting, the lines he never said aloud but needed me to see. I handed it over. Read it. Ethan took the papers like they might burn him. He flipped through the account records, the advisor emails, the emergency withdrawals marked K. On the last page, his hands clenched. He didn't tell me any of this, because he knew what you'd do with it. He looked like he might argue, but he couldn't, because the proof was in black and white. He still loves me, he muttered. I'm sure he does, I said. But love doesn't mean I have to let you wreck what's left of them. He placed the papers back down, not neatly, just enough to show he was done pretending. So what now? He asked. I'm just out. No, I said. You're just not entitled. His face twisted into something between defeat and disbelief. I didn't feel the silence. Let him sit with it. He walked to the door more slowly this time, opened it, paused, turned back. You really think this makes you the hero? No, I said. It makes me the boundary. He didn't slam the door, didn't yell, just left hands in his hoodie shoulders lower than when he came in. I locked the door behind him and leaned against it for a moment, not to steady myself, but to savor the stillness that followed, the kind you only get when the noise finally learns it's no longer welcome. There wasn't a victory dance, no swelling music in the background, just the cool click of a lock sliding into place, and the knowledge that for once, I hadn't let guilt open the door. I hadn't heard from him for 2 weeks. Then an email popped up in the middle of a quiet Thursday afternoon. Subject line: You win. No message body, no attachments, just 2 words, and Ethan's name in the sender line. I stared at it briefly, then archived it without opening. Not out of anger, not even out of satisfaction, just because I didn't owe that silence any more attention. 5 minutes later, the phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice was softer than I remembered. She didn't even try to pretend she was calling about something casual. Ethan told us you spoke, she said. I didn't answer. She went on. He's upset. I know he doesn't always say things the right way, but he's been rattled. I let that hang. We were hoping. She paused. Maybe there's still a way to mend things, without all this legal distance. Mom, I said, calm, and even I didn't create the distance. I just stopped ignoring it. She sighed, that tired breath she used to take when she was too weary to fight, but too stubborn to back off. I know you've done a lot, she said. No, I cut in. I didn't do a lot. I did everything. The line went quiet for a second. Then she whispered, He's still your brother. And I was still his sister when he drained their account and lied to my face. Another pause. Maybe if you just came over, just talked, maybe we could sit down like a family again. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so wildly detached from reality it bordered on performance. I'm not coming back to play the mediator, Mom. That job's closed. No. I could feel her grip tightening on the phone even through the silence. But she didn't push. Not this time. Maybe because she knew it wouldn't work. Or maybe because part of her had finally read the fine print on everything I'd sent. After we hung up, I opened my laptop again and pulled up the trust records, not because anything was wrong, but just to remind myself that everything was finally in place. I scrolled through the signatures, the dispersal limits, the oversight permissions. No one, not Ethan, not even my parents, could unlock the funds or change the structure without the trustees' approval and a notarized review. It was airtight. Still, just to be sure, I added one more alert to the monitoring system. If anyone tried to access the trust or request information, I'd get a real-time ping. The next day, I got a text from an unknown number, just a thumbs-up emoji. Nothing else. No name. I deleted it. I sat at my kitchen counter and poured a glass of wine that night. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to bother me, but now it felt like a choice I'd made. I pulled out a notepad and jotted down a list. Things I will no longer do. No more guilt gifts. No more last-minute bailouts. No more just showing up with flowers to soften the silence. No more birthdays I had to remember for everyone. No more covering for grown adults who never learned to say thank you. I put the pen down and reread the list. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even that long. But it felt final. Later that week, I ran into a neighbor on the elevator. She asked how my family was doing. It was small talk, the kind you're supposed to answer with a polite smile and a vague, "They're fine." But I said, "They're learning, and so am I." She nodded like she understood, even though I knew she didn't. I stepped into my apartment and locked the door behind me, not to shut people out, but because some spaces are only sacred when you protect them. I made dinner without glancing at my phone. No background texts, no performative check-ins, just music low and steady. And when I sat down to eat, I didn't check emails. I didn't scan the group chat I'd quietly left weeks ago. I didn't peek at anyone's stories to see if they were pretending to be okay. I just ate. Fork plate wine. My name was on the lease. My silence in the air was not empty. It was just earned. There wasn't a single part of me that missed being the family's silent insurance policy. And that email, "You win." It was the most honest thing Ethan had ever written. Because he was right. I did win. I won by finally walking off a battlefield I was never supposed to be fighting alone in the first place. I walked into the mediator's office like stepping into a dental appointment, calm, braced, and entirely uninterested in small talk. The conference room was generic, with a window facing a brick wall and a table big enough for 10 people, but only 3 chairs were pulled out. My parents were already seated. Tom had his hands folded, eyes on a speck of lint on his pants. My mom, Karen, had a notepad, but she wasn't writing on it. Elaine, the mediator, looked like she'd seen it all, mid-50s, glasses on a chain, and an expression that didn't budge no matter who flinched first. She nodded politely at me, motioned toward the open seat. "I'll give us 5 minutes," she said, stepping out. I took my chair without looking at my parents. It wasn't tension. It was silence, thick and polite, like a dinner with strangers who all share the same last name. Elaine came back and sat at the head of the table. "We're here to clarify expectations," she said evenly. "To speak plainly and hear each other without blame." That was the theory. My mom, Karen, went first. She talked about being worried about how the family had become fractured. Her voice trembled enough to suggest genuine concern, but not to admit fault. Tom didn't say much, just muttered about how he never wanted things to get this bad. Then my mother continued. She didn't yell, didn't cry. She said, "It feels like I lost everything all at once." I waited. That wasn't a statement that asked for comfort. It was a soft preamble to deflection. She said she made mistakes. She admitted she took money. She even said the word lied to him, but none of it landed with weight. It was a confession curated for sympathy, not ownership. Elaine looked at me. "Would you like to respond?" I didn't raise my voice. Didn't lean forward. I just looked at my mother. "You didn't lose everything I said. You spent it. And then you expected someone else to keep paying the bill." My mother opened her mouth, but Elaine raised a hand. "Please," she said, "no interruptions." I went on. "I was never trying to hurt anyone. I just stopped pretending that bleeding slowly was a form of love." Mom looked away. Tom stared harder at the table. The trust was never about punishment, I said. It was about reality. You can't keep borrowing from people who've stopped breathing. Elaine gave everyone time to sit with that. When the room had gone still again, she opened the folder before her and walked through each section: terms of the trust, housing rights, financial restrictions, what support was still being provided, and what was permanently off limits. She asked if anyone wanted to suggest amendments. No one spoke. She gave us space to clarify boundaries. Still, no one moved. I want to say something, my mother said suddenly. Elaine nodded. I miss my daughter, she said. I waited. Not because of the money, she added, but because you used to be there. You used to care. I met her eyes. I still care. That's why I finally stepped back. Her mouth tightened, but she didn't argue. I didn't ask to be the one holding everything up, I said. I just happened to be the only one who wouldn't let it fall. Elaine asked if there was anything else anyone wanted to say. Mom shook her head, tears now visible but still unshed. Tom cleared his throat but said nothing. My mother leaned back in her chair like gravity had finally caught up to her. I said one last thing. I'm not coming back to fix this. That's not what this meeting is for. This is me being clear, not cruel. Elaine thanked everyone for their time and started stacking the papers. The session was over. There were no hugs, no apologies, just a slow shuffle of chairs on cheap carpet and the sound of documents being zipped into folders. Outside, the sun had started to set. The parking lot was quiet. I got into my car without looking back. On the drive home, I passed the diner where my mother once joked I should work if this whole overachiever thing flops. It looked tired now, lights flickering behind the blinds. I stopped at a red light and watched a group of teenagers cross the street, all noise, motion, and zero shame. I envied them for half a second. Then the light changed, and I kept going. Back at home, I placed the mediator's summary on my counter and didn't read it. I already knew what it said, and for once, I didn't need to explain myself to anyone. I took the stairs that morning instead of the elevator 3 flights up. No rush, no destination that demanded urgency. Something was steadying about the quiet. No buzzing group chats, no calendar invites to check. No text from Mom with passive-aggressive recipes she thought I'd appreciate. Just stillness and a cup of lukewarm coffee that I didn't reheat. I sat by the window, bare feet on the radiator, watching a pigeon try and fail to steal a sandwich crust from someone's lunch bag at the park across the street. It was the most drama I'd seen in days. No calls from Mom, no emails, no cousins playing messenger. It wasn't distance, it was absence, and it was starting to feel like peace. I'd reworked my routines without realizing it. Grocery lists were shorter, I didn't stock extra snacks, just in case someone drops by. I stopped preemptively checking my bank account before family birthdays out of that old reflex of, maybe I'll cover it this year. I started learning how to make bread not because of some influencer trend, but because kneading dough gave my hands something to do while my brain sat still. It was the first time in years I let silence be company instead of something to fix. Sometimes Mom texted nothing heavy, just photos of their backyard, a soup she made, one blurry shot of the maple tree that had somehow survived another winter. I didn't ignore her, but I didn't rush to reply either. The rhythm was unspoken short messages, no asks, no guilt, hidden in casserole recipes. The house was officially under the trust. The paperwork had gone through a month earlier, quiet and uneventful, just a phone call from the notary confirming receipt. No one tried to contest it. No one even tried to charm their way around it. I took that as a win. The stipend went out each month on time in full, just enough to keep the lights on and prescriptions filled. No more. The trustee had only contacted me once to confirm a mailing address update. I didn't recognize the handwriting on the form. Maybe Tom's, maybe not. I'd heard Mom had found a job at a florist part-time small shop. She was learning to arrange bouquets. Something about it made sense: delicate, short-lived things that look like effort, but don't last long enough to need real follow-through. I didn't ask questions. I didn't send congratulations. You just leave some things where they are. One Saturday, I passed by a community board outside the corner cafe. A flyer flapped in the wind. Yoga for veterans. I stood there staring at it long enough for the barista to ask if I needed a drink. I said no and kept walking. Back home, I looked up the program. Free nearby quiet. I signed up and didn't tell anyone. Being in a room where no one needed anything from me felt strange. Being present didn't come with financial support or emotional labor, just a mat, a teacher with too many bracelets, and 30 minutes of breathing like it mattered. By mid-spring, I had a drawer full of unopened invitations, baby showers, weddings, graduation cookouts. I RSVP'd no to them, not because I was angry, but because I didn't want to keep showing up out of muscle memory. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is not go. I didn't delete old family photos. I just stopped scrolling through them at 2 a.m. looking for clues. And I didn't miss anything. That version of me, the one smiling on the edge, credit card in her purse, ready to pick up the slack, she was done. I wasn't rebuilding. I was editing. I donated a closet full of dresses I'd only worn to events I never wanted to be at. I unfollowed people who only popped up when they needed something. I unsubscribed from every email that started with "Hey friend," and somewhere in that quiet I noticed I wasn't lonely. I'd been lonely for years and never noticed because I was too busy being useful. But this space I'd carved out of my spine felt like something new. I got used to cooking, for one, not out of bitterness but out of precision. I made real meals, real plates. No more eating over the sink between errands. No more protein bars in the car because someone needed me at the bank by 5. Now dinner happened when I was hungry, no agenda, no calendar guilt, just food that tasted like freedom. I ran into an old coworker one day, the kind who used to laugh a little too loud at team lunches. She said, "You look different." I smiled. I started sleeping. She laughed, not sure if I was joking. I wasn't. Most nights I went to bed without checking my phone. And when I woke up, there were no fires to put out. I just had coffee, yoga if I felt like it, and whatever came next. No chaos, no begging for respect in a group chat. No decoding passive-aggressive emojis. Just one woman one morning and the silence that doesn't need to be filled. I was washing dishes when I noticed the envelope on the floor slipped through the mail slot without a sound. Cream-colored, my name written in ballpoint pen, slanted left, clean and slow, like someone took their time. No return address, but I already knew. I let it sit on the counter until the water cooled. When I finally opened it, I recognized the handwriting before I read a word. It was from my mother. Inside was a folded piece of lined paper, the kind she used to keep near the phone in the kitchen, back when people still wrote things down instead of texting them. The first line was simple. "I've rewritten this 6 times." She didn't apologize directly. That wasn't her style. But she listed things: the times she looked away, the silence she mistook for peace, the comfort she allowed herself to accept, without asking where it came from. She didn't beg. She didn't defend. She just said she saw it now, what I'd carried, how long I'd carried it, and how much she'd let happen in plain sight. "You were the strongest one," she wrote. So we leaned. And just like that, it didn't feel like a trap anymore. It didn't feel like manipulation dressed in maternal guilt. It felt like honesty. Late, but real. She ended with, "You gave us more than we knew how to hold. You were always ours. We just weren't always yours. I'm sorry." No signature, just a small pressed flower taped to the bottom corner, a pansy purple dried probably from the garden behind the house. I folded the letter and slid it into the drawer where I kept the trust paperwork and the old medical license I never hung on a wall. Then I went for a walk. The air smelled like lilac and rain. I passed the barber shop with the always flickering neon sign, nodded at the woman from the bakery sweeping her stoop, and crossed the street to avoid a kid on a scooter with no brake sense. Everything was so normal, it felt like magic. I didn't cry. Not from the letter, not from the flower. I'd done that already, years of it behind car steering wheels and inside bathroom stalls holding it all in, because someone always needed something the second I looked like I couldn't give more. Now I just breathed. I stopped by the park. The swings creaked empty. A squirrel buried something beneath the sandbox. Two teens sat under the pavilion, not speaking, just sharing space in the way only people without history can. I envied them for exactly 3 seconds. Then I went home. I made tea. I didn't check my phone. I didn't check in. I just lived. The following week, I dropped off a care package at the VA clinic near Broad Street, coffee pods, crossword books, packs of gum, a few novels I'd never reread. The guy at the front desk looked surprised, but didn't ask questions. Name for the donation list, I shook my head. Just use, from someone who's been there. He smiled. You want a receipt? Nope. For the first time, giving didn't feel like losing. Back at home, I passed the mirror and stopped. Not because I looked different, but because I didn't look tired. There was no slump in my shoulders, no pulled jawline from grinding my teeth at night. Just a woman in sweatpants holding an empty tote bag who wasn't on call for anyone's crisis. I laughed once, low and short, no punchline, just relief. Later that month, my neighbor invited me to a backyard cookout. I almost said no out of habit, but something made me pause. I asked, "Do I need to bring anything?" She waved it off. "Just yourself." That night, I brought lemonade, stood by the grill, and told one guy how to fix a sprained ankle without needing urgent care. Old instincts still sound, they're just not in demand anymore. At the night's end, someone said, "You coming to the next one?" And I didn't flinch. I said, "Yeah, I think I am." Grace doesn't always knock with drama. Sometimes it arrives in envelopes, cookouts, or the quiet relief of knowing nobody's calling you just to ask for a favor disguised as love. We never went back to how things were. Not really. Some distances are meant to hold. Mom and Tom stayed within polite reach. Birthday texts, holiday calls, a photo of the backyard chairs facing the sunset. We didn't pretend it was fixed. We just agreed it didn't need to be broken anymore. And me, I filled my days with small things, walks, library runs, bad reality, television, cooking. Just enough for 1.5 servings, because sometimes leftovers mean you cared for your future self a little bit. I didn't tell this story for applause or pity. I told it because if you've ever been the steady one, the strong one, the dependable, invisible backbone of a family too comfortable with taking you, need to hear this. You're allowed to stop, not to punish, but to preserve. You can choose quiet over chaos, structure, over guilt boundaries, over blood. You don't have to keep bleeding to prove your family. You can still love them. You just don't have to bankrupt yourself to do it. And when people ask, "But they're your parents," I smile now. I say, "They were. And now I'm mine too." Funny thing about family revenge stories, they don't always end with someone screaming in a courtroom or throwing dishes in a kitchen. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is a quiet life, a steady one. The kind where no one's draining your savings behind your back. Where love doesn't come with invoices. Being the strong one doesn't mean being everyone's fallback plan. If you've ever been pulled into someone else's chaos and called it love, if you've ever been told you're overreacting while quietly funding everyone else's comfort, then maybe this wasn't just my story. Maybe it was yours too. If you're into real family revenge stories that don't rely on fiction. If you like revenge stories where justice isn't loud but sharp. If you've lived through family drama and made it out with your sanity intact, then hit subscribe. Not for me, for you. Because you deserve to hear stories where walking away isn't weakness, it's freedom.